Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan.
And I'm Hemkor Soran. On the show today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that the country will be able to reach anywhere in Iran should the need arise. As mediators engage in negotiations for a ceasefire deal, tensions in West Asia show no signs of abating. We'll bring you the latest on this on the show today. Also on World DNA, the US, South Korea and Japan, they've released a joint statement condemning the missile launch as a flagrant violation of numerous UN Security Council resolutions. They urged North Korea to immediately cease its series of provocative and destabilizing actions that threaten peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and regions beyond. This and a lot more lined up for you right here on World DNA. We'll bring you the latest on all these fronts. Let's start with the headlines. Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is able to reach anywhere in Iran should the need arise. In a speech to new military officers, he says Israel has unprecedented freedom of action following its recent airstrikes against Iran.
That as many as 8,000 of those North Korean forces have been deployed to the Kursk region.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says as many as 8,000 North Korean troops have reached Russia's Kursk border region and are ready to enter combat with Ukrainian forces in the coming days.
North Korea releases images of the country's latest missile test showing leader Kim Jong-un watching the launch. The United States and South Korea call it destabilizing actions threatening the peace and security of the region.
He simply does not respect the freedom of women or the intelligence of women to know what's in their own best interest and make decisions accordingly.
Kamala Harris quotes women during her campaigning in swing state of Arizona, slams Trump's comment about protecting women like it or not.
Death toll from devastating flash floods in eastern Spain climbs to 158, with rescue teams still searching for those missing in what could become Europe's worst storm-related disaster in over 5 decades.
Attackers set fire to the headquarters of Bangladesh Jatiya Party that supported the country's ousted leader Sheikh Hasina. No one claimed responsibility for the attack.
Ruud van Nistelrooy is expected to remain in charge of Manchester United for their upcoming clash against Chelsea. This comes as Ruben Amorim has promised to provide clarity regarding his potential appointment as manager of the Red Devils later today. All right, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that the country will be able to reach anywhere in Iran should the need arise.
Well, on this front, of course, in a speech to new military officers, Netanyahu said that Israel has unprecedented freedom of action following its recent airstrikes against Iran.
Israel today has more freedom of action in Iran than ever. We can reach any place in Iran as necessary. The supreme goal I gave to the Israel Defense Forces and the security branches is to prevent Iran from achieving a nuclear weapon.
Meanwhile, Israel continues to pound Lebanon. Strikes hit Baalbek, a city situated in the east of Lebanon, as well as the southern city. This after Israel issued evacuation calls for both the areas.
On the other hand, Israeli emergency services said a rocket launched from Lebanon killed 2 people in Olive Grove in northern Israel on Thursday, bringing the day's death toll to 7. Shifting our focus to Gaza now, a large explosion rang out over the strip on Thursday night.
Earlier in the day, in the occupied West Bank, 3 Palestinians, including a child, were killed by Israel. The Israeli army said it was conducting an operation targeting terrorist infrastructure in Tulkarm's Nur Shams refugee camp. A medical clinic operated by Palestinian refugee agency UNRWA was destroyed during the raid in the camp, and some roads were razed. Al-Quds Brigades, which is the armed wing of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement, said in a statement that they detonated a highly explosive bomb in a military bulldozer to thwart the Israeli army's raid.
It comes as US diplomats were in the region pushing for a ceasefire in both Lebanon and Gaza, hoping to wind down the wars in West Asia as the Biden administration enters its final months. Senior White House aides Brett McGurk and Amos Hochstein were in Israel on Thursday and held talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and senior officials of Israel.
Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has called on Israel to facilitate a second round of vaccinations in Gaza. The first round was completed and the second round, essential to build up immunity, began as scheduled on the 14th of October before being paused due to intense bombardment by Israel.
Speaking of Lebanon, Blinken said the negotiations have made good progress towards a deal that would indeed bring a ceasefire.
Right now, we have made good progress on those understandings. We still have more work to do, but that's what's necessary to get us to diplomatic resolution, including through a ceasefire.
And for more on this, our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik has sent us this report from Tehran. Listen to this.
Well, 1 week since Israel's attack on Iran, and life seems to be at normalcy, though the residents believe that the truth lies somewhere in between what the Irani side has said and the Israeli side has said. With that being said, Friday is an important day because expectedly is when Ayatollah, the supreme leader, is to make an appearance, likely to make an appearance during the Friday prayers, and if he does and what he says will define the Iranian policy going forward, especially amidst chants of an incoming Iranian response. Also, what will define Iran's response is the prospects of ceasefire in Lebanon. In case if that materializes, then the prospects of an Iranian response are very, very low. That being said, people here, they have mixed emotions, but all in all, they believe that the new government led by Dr. Pezeshkian would do all what it has to make sure that Iran's relationship with the neighborhood and the extended neighborhood are better. The impact of it can be felt and should be felt for the common citizens of Iran. Anas Malik in Tehran in Iran for WION World is One.
And to discuss this further, we're now being joined by Mr. Edward P. Joseph, who is joining us from Washington, D.C. He's a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins University, also the current executive director of the National Council on U.S.-Libya Relations. So thank you so much for joining us on World DNA.
Good to be with you again.
Now, Mr. Joseph, when Netanyahu says that Israel has absolute freedom to go anywhere in Iran, what do you reckon he is implying? Does this hint towards possibly targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure?
I think what he's hinting at is that it would be unwise for Iran to launch another strike on Israel. After Iran launched almost 200 ballistic missiles at Israel on October 1st, and that produced the Israeli retaliatory action, which, as Prime Minister Netanyahu explained, was not only successful in that Israeli jets went into Iranian airspace and also fired from nearby Iraqi airspace, and that's that's over 1,000 miles from Israel, and that's exposing fighter jets that require refueling to Iranian air defense systems, including Russian-supplied air defense systems. None of those proved effective in this retaliatory strike, and on top of that, Israel has taken out those air defense systems, including the ones that Russia supplied that were considered advanced. And in addition to that, apparently Israel has crippled part of Iran's missile production facility, particularly the one in Parchin that produces the motors that missiles require. So all that means is that what Prime Minister Netanyahu is signaling is that Iran is vulnerable here. If it strikes again, Israel will have indeed more freedom of maneuver, and Iran will have less of a cushion of missiles to strike Israel with if they go to complete escalation. Please.
Mr. Joseph, if I'll just take what Haim asked you earlier, I'll take that and string it along with something that you mentioned, that Israel indeed did take out several of Iran's air defense systems, the Russian ones, the S-300s that they have deployed around their energy infrastructure, which would of course imply that their energy infrastructure is now vulnerable. Should there be another strike from Israel towards Iran in case of an Iranian counter, do you feel those energy facilities will be the next target of Israeli attacks?
That's a very interesting question. They're certainly more vulnerable. So what we know at a minimum is that in terms of calculating in Tehran, if you're a military planner, if you're the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, you have to consider that. And we have another angle here that to consider with respect to your question, which is the position of the United States. Now, of course, we here in the United States, we're coming up, of course, to this very important election, including the presidential election, but that will be over soon. And we know the context here is that the Biden administration asked the Israelis not to strike the oil facilities, not to strike Iran's nuclear program, those facilities either, and Israel complied with that. Also, the U.S. deployed very sophisticated air defense system, the THAAD system, to Israel with U.S. troops. So what does it mean? It means that if Iran attacks again, it's attacking at a time when the U.S., when Israel also has strong political support, because the Israelis listened to what the Americans were asking. The Israelis demonstrated their freedom of maneuver and their ability and determination to strike Iran, but they did as the Americans requested. This was probably a joint decision that they made. And so the Israelis are in a strong political position. And let's not forget, there are U.S. troops on the ground now in Israel. So if Iran targets that system and any U.S. troops are killed, it will be very bad for Iran. And one more thing, again, for Iranian planners to have to consider. Please.
Mr. Joseph, now there are reports suggesting that Iran is preparing for an unimaginable response to Israel's attacks, and it may just happen before the US elections. And US has also warned that if Iran does any such thing before the 5th of November, US will consider it as a direct interference with the US election process. So there is a certain strong warning coming in from the US there as well. Of course, the next few days are going to be extremely crucial for the entire West and, of course, the West Asian part of the world as well. Thank you so much for joining in, Dr. Joseph. Always a pleasure speaking with you, and there will be lots more to discuss in days to come.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on then. Russia's relentless offensive in eastern Ukraine, it is gaining momentum.
However, Ukrainian drones are increasingly targeting Russian military and civilian targets. Our next story details how Moscow is installing drone jammers on passenger buses. Take a look at this one.
The Ukrainian military, despite its valiant efforts, is struggling to contain the Russian advance. Russia's forces are pushing deeper into eastern Ukraine. seizing new towns with swift advances fueled by superior firepower and an arsenal of advanced weaponry. Moscow's troops are moving at their fastest pace in over a year, deploying smart bombs to hit critical Ukrainian targets and unleashing relentless artillery fire to breach Ukrainian defenses. Amid signs of the conflict expanding with North Korean troops' involvement, Moscow's advances are reshaping the battleground. One of the defining features of this war has been the widespread use of drones by both sides. Ukrainian forces have effectively employed drones to target Russian tanks and other armored vehicles. Russia has also deployed drones both for surveillance and offensive purposes, including attacks on energy infrastructure. In a recent move, Russian-installed authorities in Horlivka, a town close to the front lines, have fitted local buses with drone jamming devices. These devices disrupt a drone's connection to its operator, rendering it uncontrollable and minimizing its threat.
Of course, the drone jammers are useful. They protected the transport, the people, and the passengers.
I was approaching a bus without jammer. A guy who drove a bus off Route 8 was parked nearby when drones were flying. One drone tried to approach me when I was driving in Bessarabka. I have switched the jammer on and the drone flew away and dropped its payload. I have no idea what it was, but it was something.
The war in Ukraine has become a testing ground for modern warfare, with drones playing a pivotal role in shaping the battlefield. As the conflict continues, it is likely that we will witness even more innovative and destructive use of weaponry, pushing the boundaries of warfare into uncharted territory. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
It's days to go before the presidential elections in the US, and as the race to the White House nears, our colleague Jyotsna Kumar has the latest for you.
All right, with just days to go for the U.S. presidential election, let's take a look at the stories that are shaping the race to the White House. In a campaign stop in Arizona on Thursday, Vice President Kamala Harris criticized Donald Trump's recent comments on women's rights. Now, Harris argued that Trump's statement that he would protect women whether they like it or not reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of women's rights to make personal decisions about their lives and bodies. The Western Swing State event highlighted Harris's stance on reproductive freedom and autonomy as a key issue in the 2024 election.
And this is not the first time he has told us who he is. He does not believe women should have the agency and authority to make decisions about their own bodies. This is the same man who said women should be punished for their choices. He simply does not respect the freedom of women or the intelligence of women to know what's in their own best interest and make decisions accordingly.
At a campaign event in Pennsylvania, Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Tim Walz criticized Donald Trump's economic record and took aim at the recent partnership between Trump and billionaire Elon Musk. Walz highlighted Musk's role as Trump's proposed economy czar and questioned Musk's assertion that economic hardship may be necessary to improve the system.
Look, if you were a billionaire like his good buddy Elon Musk, things were really good because you got a tax cut, the rest of us got screwed. That's the way it worked during that time. Now, Elon says he is going to be, if Trump says it, he's going to be Trump's economy czar. Now he says to make the economy work better, we're going to have to crash it first in order to save it. Now he told you, get ready. Elon said, American folks, you're going to go through some hardships.
And on the other hand, former President and Republican nominee Donald Trump made a campaign stop in New Mexico on Thursday, a state he lost by 10 points in 2020. They said, don't come, you can't win New Mexico. But I said, we can win New Mexico, is what he said. At the rally, he also aimed to appeal to Latino voters, despite recent controversy over comedian Tony Hinchcliffe's comments about Puerto Rico at an earlier Trump event. Hispanics love Trump, Trump said, adding they're smarter than the person running on the Democrat side.
You know, in the East Coast, they like being called Hispanics. You know this? On the West Coast, they like being called Latinos. So, poll, give me a free poll. You know, I don't have to spend $300,000. First is going to be Latinos, next is Hispanics, right? Which do you prefer? Latinos. Uh-oh. Let me give it one more shot. Latinos. Hispanics.
Now, Trump claimed that fraudulent voting could impact Tuesday's election, echoing his unproven allegations of 2020 election fraud. And well, that's all the updates for now. Back to you guys. Heyman and Shivan.
Thank you so much, Josna, for all the updates from the campaign trail in the United States. Let's shift our focus now. The United States, South Korea have condemned the latest missile launch by North Korea.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, they both met with their South Korean counterparts in Washington. Now, as the meeting in Washington was underway, the U.S., South Korea and Japan, they released a joint statement condemning the missile launch as a flagrant violation of numerous UN Security Council resolutions.
They've urged North Korea to immediately cease its series of provocative and destabilizing actions that threaten peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and beyond.
One of the things that we emphasized today was a reaffirmation of the United States' ironclad commitment to the ROK's security, and that includes through extended deterrence. That's especially important in light of the ongoing provocations coming from North Korea, including another ICBM launch just yesterday. We condemn it in the strongest terms.
On North Korea's ICBM launch yesterday, we denounced this with one voice and urged North Korea to abide by the UN Security Council resolutions. Also, on the escalating North Korea nuclear and missile threats, we agree to continually strengthen on deterrence and response.
North Korea test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time in almost a year, demonstrating a potential advancement in its ability to launch long-range nuclear attacks on the mainland US. Some experts speculate that Russia may have provided technological assistance to North Korea for the launch.
According to the North's state media, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un observed the launch, calling it an appropriate military action to show North Korea's resolve to respond to its enemies' moves that have threatened the North's safety. Divers plunged into the river while high mountain police hot-footed through the rubble in a rush to find 5 residents of the hamlet missing after Spain's apocalyptic floods.
Now, rescue workers, they're working round the clock to locate more survivors locked in a race against time. Here's a report. Take a look.
Rescue teams searched for the missing in Spain on Thursday after scores of people were killed in the country's worst flood-related disaster in modern history. A Spanish government minister said dozens and dozens of people were still unaccounted for after a year's worth of rain fell in 8 hours in parts of the Valencia region on Tuesday. In the town of Paiporta, the epicenter of the disaster, people walked through mangled cars and debris as residents tried to clear the streets. Isabel Seradia says she was lucky to survive. The water was already up to here, to the neck, she said. If it wasn't for my neighbors, I wouldn't be telling this story. In Valencia, this resident says warnings came too late and that deaths could have been avoided. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez urged people in flooded areas to stay at home due to the threat of more stormy weather. He said the government will keep providing resources to search for missing people as long as necessary. Opposition politicians accused the central government of acting too slowly to warn residents and send in rescue teams. That prompted the Interior Ministry to say regional authorities were responsible for civil protection measures. Spain's transport minister said about 50 miles of roads in the eastern region were seriously damaged or impassable, some blocked by cars containing dead bodies. Research group Climate Central said in a report on Thursday that a low-pressure system behind Spain's floods had tapped into an atmospheric river carrying excess moisture from the unusually warm tropical Atlantic. Meteorologists say human-driven climate change is making such extreme weather events more frequent and destructive.
And with that, it's time now for a short break. Don't go anywhere. Lots lined up for you on the other side of the show as well.
The US race to power, marked by high-octane campaign rallies, life-threatening encounters, game-changing presidential debates, the color and the drama, the key defining moments, deep insights and informed analysis. Watch continuous coverage of the US presidential elections 2024 on WION World is Wide.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership, we will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
We need to protect the border. We need to reduce inflation.
The election is free and fair, and that Kamala Harris wins.
Climate change, and I think affordable housing for all is important to me.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Haim and I'm Shivan. Lots more on this side of the show as well. Let's start with the headlines.
The Indian capital's air quality plummets after Diwali as people defy ban on firecrackers. Celebrating with fireworks, residents in Delhi NCR woke up to smoke blanketing the sky in the region.
Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is able to reach anywhere in Iran should the need arise in a speech to new military officers. He says Israel has unprecedented freedom of action following its recent airstrikes against Iran.
Many as 8,000 of those North Korean forces have been deployed to the Kursk region.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says as many as 8,000 North Korean troops have reached Russia's Kursk border region and are ready to enter combat with Ukrainian forces in the coming days.
North Korea releases images of the country's latest missile test showing leader Kim Jong-un watching the launch. US and South Korea call it destabilizing actions, threatening the peace and security of the region.
He simply does not respect the freedom of women or the intelligence of women to know what's in their own best interest and make decisions accordingly.
Kamala Harris quotes women during her campaigning in swing state of Arizona, slams Trump's comments about protecting women, like it or not.
Attackers set fire to the headquarters of Bangladesh's Jatiya Party that supported the country's ousted leader Sheikh Hasina. No one claimed responsibility for the attack.
Death toll from devastating flash floods in eastern Spain climbs to 158, with rescue teams still searching for those missing in what could become Europe's worst storm-related disaster in over 5 decades.
Ruud Nistelrooy is expected to remain in charge of Manchester United for their upcoming clash against Chelsea. This comes as Ruben Amorim has promised to provide clarity regarding his potential appointment as manager of the Red Devils later today.
In Bangladesh, attackers set fire to the headquarters of a political party that supported the country's ousted leader Sheikh Hasina on Thursday night.
According to reports, the attackers stormed the Jatiya Party's headquarters in Dhaka's Bijoy Nagar area, clashed with its members there and set the premises on fire. As the attack was underway, a prominent leader of the student protest movement that ousted Hasina called the Jatiya Party a betrayer and accused it of aiding Awami League to target students and people ahead of August 5th.
Jatiya Party men and their aide carried out an attack on students and people. This attack left at least 20 injured. They shot fires, you can ask. Jatiya Party, an enabler of Awami League, tried to carry out a genocide like the fascist Awami League did ahead of August 5th.
The latest attack comes nearly 4 months following Hasina's ouster. Hasina's Bangladesh Awami League party ruled the country for 15 years since 2009. Her critics say the Jatiya Party had acted to give Hasina's rule legitimacy as other major political parties did not take part in the elections. Sheikh Hasina fled Bangladesh on the 5th of August to India following the student-led demonstration that morphed into an anti-government protest movement. During the movement, hundreds of students, security officials and others were killed.
This year, the Indian Space Agency, ISRO, has performed 3 launch missions. All 3 missions launched satellites that are built for the Indian government.
And very soon, ISRO will be launching its only commercial mission of the year, and the customer is ISRO's European counterpart. Here's a report, take a look.
The European Space Agency is an international organization with 22 member states. It combines the financial and intellectual resources of the European nations to undertake various kinds of space missions. By pooling their resources, ESA undertakes missions that are far beyond the scope of any single European country. ESA's programs are focused on studying the Earth, the immediate space environment, the solar systems, and the universe. ESA commenced their PROBA series of missions in the year 2001. All PROBA missions are meant to test, demonstrate, and validate new technologies in orbit. So far, ESA has launched 3 PROBA missions. PROBA 3 will be the 4th in the series. PROBA 3 has been in the making for more than a decade. More than 40 European companies have contributed to this mission. According to the European Space Agency, PROBA 3 is ESA's and the world's first precision formation flying mission. A pair of satellites will fly together maintaining a fixed configuration as a large rigid structure in space to prove formation flying technologies and rendezvous experiments. PROBA 3 will study the Sun's corona, or the outermost region of the Sun's atmosphere.
This is a very interesting experiment that the ESA is trying. An ESA spokesperson told WION that these satellites are healthy and have been ready for shipment to India since early October. In fact, they've also been tested, but there's been an administrative delay. ESA wanted to launch this mission by the end of November, but because of the administrative delay, the satellites have not yet reached India. But what ESA expects is that very soon these satellites will reach India. They'll be taken to the spaceport at Sriharikota, and there they'll of course be put together, finally tested, and then readied for launch. ESA is now targeting December for the launch of this particular very exciting mission known as PROBA 3, which is part of their larger PROBA series, which has been going on for almost 2 decades now. From Chennai, Siddharth MP, WION World is One.
And here's WION's monthly global economic health check. First, let's look at how global markets performed in October.
Broadly, commodities, digital assets and the dollar rose, driven by differing bets. Bitcoin surged over 10% on the so-called Trump trade, with the top token now on the verge of breaching its previous record high set in March. Gold was the other big beneficiary in October. The yellow metals shined to repeated new record highs through the month, driven by safe haven bids from rising tensions in West Asia. Crude oil was not far behind, surging 2% as the market's attention turned back to a potential flare-up of West Asia hostilities. The dollar kept humming along on safe haven bets as the US election race heated up.
Moving on to Asia Pacific stock markets, then the sudden shift away from risk assets hit Asian markets, barring Japanese stocks. Barring Japanese stocks, regional benchmarks turned red in October. India's Sensex saw the biggest fall in the region, dropping nearly 6% in October. Chinese and Australian benchmarks fell over 1%. Japanese stocks rose over 3% as the yen weakened, boosting the outlook for the export-oriented companies. The story in American stocks was no different, with the S&P 500 and Nasdaq reversing from record highs to close out the month in the red.
Canada's stock index was the only exception, rising 0.7%. The Brazilian stock index closed out October in the red with losses of over 1.5%. Stocks across Europe and Africa fell as West Asia tensions trade flared up with China, weighed on stocks in the region. The French CACs saw the biggest losses in Europe with a drop of 3.7%. The rest declined over 1%.
Now let's turn our attention to the overall economic outlook. Let's look at the Asia-Pacific region to begin with. The International Monetary Fund gave a big thumbs up to India once again. The outlook for the rest in Asia remained negative. For China, the outlook is still mired in doubts because of the recession and its real estate crisis despite a stimulus blitz. Clearly, markets and analysts are calling for Xi Jinping to do more to support growth.
In the Americas, the outlook for the US, Canada, Brazil and Argentina shows more needs to be done. For the US economy, expectations are now for a soft landing rather than a recession. And this comes after the Fed's bazooka rate cut in September. But bets of more jumbo-sized easing in November is fading. The economic activity expectations in Canada, Brazil and Argentina were cut.
On the other side of the Atlantic, the negative outlook seems to be widespread. The UK and other European economies will likely just about avoid a recession. The outlook for African economies also remain negative.
Ahead of the US election in a few days from now, gold surged to a fresh record high.
This is investors shrugged off data that may affect the magnitude of the Fed's rate cut this year. Bullion rose to a touch over $2,790 an ounce on Thursday. It narrowly beat the previous all-time high posted on Wednesday. Take a look at this next report for more on this.
Gold prices have surged repeatedly to fresh record highs this month as Western buyers returned. According to the World Gold Council, demand for gold increased by almost 5% globally in the September quarter. That jump in demand broke the previous record and pushed gold purchases beyond $100 billion for the first time ever. Stronger investment flows from the West, notably more high net worth investors, supported the increase in volumes. That demand offset Asia's declining appetite, barring India. Following extended outflows, purchases of bullion-backed exchange-traded funds turned profitable in the last quarter. And this comes even as higher than expected US jobs data and robust GDP figures saw traders trim bets on the size of interest rate cuts by the Fed. However, the US Central Bank remains on track to implement more monetary easing at its meeting next week. Lower borrowing costs tend to benefit the precious metal as it doesn't pay interest. Gold has stormed higher this year, rallying by more than a third and setting successive records. The surge is supported by central bank buying and haven demand and comes amid conflicts in West Asia and Ukraine. The tight US presidential race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is also creating uncertainty. The jitters are underscoring bullion's role as a place of safety for investors, which set a record at over $2,790 an ounce on Wednesday, has registered gains every month this year, apart from a minor pullback in January and June, when prices were flat. John Reed, chief market strategist at the World Gold Council, referring to investors' so-called fear of missing out or FOMO, said, "The fact that corrections have been very shallow and short is a keen indication of FOMO buying." The yellow metal's 13% gain in the September quarter was mostly due to investment flows, as the demand for ETFs, bars and coins as a whole hit its highest levels since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Even as the pace of retail activity slowed, central bank purchases persisted, with Poland, Hungary and India among the top buyers. As record prices hurt consumption, jewelry demand declined. The Reserve Bank of India has been steadily building up its gold reserves. The RBI increased gold holding to about 60% in safe custody in the September quarter, up from 50% in the March quarter. This comes despite gold prices trading at life-high levels. According to the World Gold Council, the demand surge makes the RBI the second highest net purchaser of gold on a year-to-date basis. Gold remains a standard buy not just for the RBI but also for individuals in the country. The festivities in India are prime demand time for the precious metal. which is considered an auspicious buy. Next up, let's give you a glimpse of what's happening in technology. According to a report by Cyber News, an independent media outlet, a major Brazilian driving school accidentally exposed sensitive information of around 400,000 individuals. The leaked data includes names, photos, addresses, government IDs, taxpayer numbers, driving permit details, IP addresses and phone models. The report suggests the school failed to secure a cloud database, hence leaving the huge data trove open to everyone. It is believed the issue persisted for several months, with the possibility of the data being used by cyber criminals to conduct illegal activities.
The European Union has launched an investigation into Temu, that's a Chinese online retailer. Temu has been accused of alleged violation of the EU's Digital Services Act, commonly known as DSA. Regulators are particularly interested in Temu's practices regarding the sale of illegal products, its addictive design features and its recommendation systems. Regulators suspect that the company is not doing enough to prevent the sale of counterfeit and dangerous products on its platform. Meanwhile, Temu has responded to the investigation by stating that it is committed to complying with the DSA and will cooperate with the EU authorities. The company also expressed its intention to join a voluntary EU initiative to combat counterfeit goods. If found guilty, Temu could face a hefty fine of up to 6% of its global turnover.
Meet Live, a first-of-its-kind AI-generated avatar developed to support people living with Alzheimer's and dementia. Part of a project called Alzheimer's Intelligence, AI avatar Live has been developed by Innovations in Dementia, a not-for-profit community interest company, tech company Lenovo and UK's Exeter University. Live's developers claim the avatar is not a therapist but a source of information and reassurance for dementia patients. The virtual companion has been built using data from Innovations in Dementia's Dementia Diaries project, interviews and advocacy groups. Currently, a proof of concept trials are underway in controlled environments to improve the avatar as the global dementia crisis continues to grow. Technology like Live could revolutionize dementia care by providing 24/7 support and understanding.